Because we don't understand how life formed, it is difficult to estimate this probability. The likelihood of a complex molecule like DNA being created by random collisions of atoms in a primordial ocean is fantastically small. In an infinite universe, it would happen in some places, but they would be very far apart. If we want to find advanced intelligent life, our best bet is to listen for radio signals.
Look up to the stars and the forests that surround. Do you see them? Do you hear them? Are they there? SpacedOutRadio.com presents S4 with Forest Moon Paranormal's Eric Cooper and friends. Also, take the time to join the Forest Moon Paranormal Facebook group.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque.
Conspiracy, Area 51, Dogman, Ghosts, Cover-Ups, UFOs. The hidden will reveal itself.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go live on S4 with Eric Cooper.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to S4 with Eric Cooper, broadcasting live from the beautiful mountains of Concrete, Washington. Tonight we are doing something a little bit different than we usually do, and we are discussing winter preparedness and survival. On our panel tonight, we have Eric Markham, our F&P scientist. We have our Keith Andrews, astrologer and alien specialist, myself, Corey Reese, and your host, Forest Moon Paranormal's own, Mr. Eric Cooper.
Hey, good evening. Yeah, we changed up a lot tonight because I'm actually coming to you live from a hotel in SeaTac. So, yeah, we'll be back in town tomorrow. And yeah, we are changing things up. Disaster prep and survival are skills that you develop in the military and are a very, very real threat to our community in Concrete. So I have geared tonight's show towards Concrete, but bear in mind, folks, a disaster is real around the world, and you react the same to any disaster, regardless of what the disaster is. Now, before we get started, I do want to give a big shout out to the Netherlands, because I've noticed, I track numbers in S4, and I track countries that are listening to S4, and we have listeners in the Netherlands every week. So I've got to give a big shout out to our listeners in the Netherlands, because we have a huge following in Australia and the UK and Canada, and of course the US. But every time I look at my stats, I see the Netherlands. So give a shout out, panel, to the Netherlands. I mean, I think that's awesome. Real quick side note, on the 14th is UFO investigation and abduction training, and then the 27th, we are doing our joint team meeting as well, and that'll be at the Burlington Library at 2:30. Anyway, how are we doing tonight, guys?
Absolutely fantabulous.
Is Markham with us?
Fantabulous. Yeah, yep. I'm fantabulous as well.
Excellent. So we're talking. Corey, I don't hear you. You doing excellent tonight?
Oh, I heard you. I said hi.
He's just ignoring you, that's all.
So tonight, I know I've been pushing tonight's show in the concrete group as well, because this affects them, and I get asked questions all the time about how you respond, how do we react. And I'm going to, not really rant per se, but, you know, I get irritated because the quote-unquote experts in the disaster field, one are new. We have a new emergency management that's taken over, and they need input. By all means, they need input because they don't know what goes on upriver as far as they know we have volcanoes, they know we have landslides. We're going to get to that for a minute shortly, and then we're going to talk tonight what covers what specifics about winter survival do we need to look at, how to pack, what needs to go in your vehicle, because you know I actually had one of our community members talk about somebody that apparently got stuck in the snow in their car a few years ago and actually froze to death. Well, that kind of stuff could be prevented with some simple tools and some simple stuff you can put in your car. And I know, Corey, you probably heard about it a few years ago. There's also the guy on, Interstate 101 over by the ocean that I believe their motorhome got stuck on a forestry road, and they got found an hour after the guy died. You know, things like that could have been avoided. But we have people that move up to the concrete community all the time. Some from the city, some from other rural areas. But we have a lot of threats and a lot of disasters waiting to happen. It's not a matter of if they're going to happen. It's a matter of when. So tonight's going to be an intense show. It's going to be an information-packed show because before we even get into the winter stuff, I want to talk about the family emergency plan because that always comes up. And then we're going to go into, towards the end of it, what you put in your medical bag. That's a completely different topic. You stay with your car. Exactly, Trip. You don't leave your car. If you get stuck in the snow, you stay with the car because the first thing they're going to find is your car. If you leave your car, you're going to get even more lost, depending on where you're at. And they're going to find your car, but they won't find you. So, exactly, Trip, you stay with the car. Anyway, what's your guys' input?
Well, the first thing I've always figured is, I absolutely agree, is stay with the car. The other thing is make sure you're able to, that you get, as far as I understand, and first I got to clarify, I am not trained in this field at all. Okay. Mm-hmm. So my being out in the woods is just not likely to happen. But I've always been told that right from the get-go, get your flashers going. Now, it might kill the battery, but, and correct me if I'm wrong or more to the point out for everybody else if I am, but it's easier to spot a car even in a snowstorm if the emergencies are going. If your blinkers or if the hazard lights are going.
Right.
Well, that's kind of the whole point of emergency flashers, for emergencies. But, this is one of those things that we hear about. I mean, every single year you hear about, somebody who had an accident or got stuck or broke down or something in a place that is not so hospitable, and they die out there because they do something wrong or they aren't prepared for it. More and more people need to start trying to have preparedness ready and stop trying to count on the fact that, a cell phone is always going to work, because it's not, or something else. You've got to be ready for when these things happen. There's certain things you should have in your vehicle if you're taking a trip somewheres. It just planning.
Exactly.
Planning is something that has been forgotten so much, but needs to happen. People are so used to the technology age and all this technology and everything else that we have that, this is going to save us. Not always. Technology fails. You better be ready.
Well, the other thing I was always told, and I was always taught, is when you're heading out, especially in weather that can go sour, let somebody know where you're heading and about how long you should be out there. So if you don't show up in a reasonable amount of time, they start looking immediately.
And Ron brings up an excellent point, can opener. And I'm going to mention that for a second because I'm sorry, you know what? We have an electric can opener. If power goes out, you're kind of screwed because, if you don't have a hand can opener, you can have all the canned food in the world, but if you can't open it, it's useless. So make sure you go to the dollar store. I always recommend the dollar store because it's only $1, and get yourself a hand can opener. And we're going to get into all that shortly, but it appalls me. I don't care about credentials. I really don't. I don't ask anybody their credentials. Information is information. But I actually got to ask, well, what are your credentials? Well, really? You want to go there?
How old am I and I'm still alive? That's my credentials. I've obviously done something
the
right.
Credentials that I was asking, this person was older than me, and this person went through CERT. CERT's an excellent program, but let me explain something about CERT. CERT in a disaster, along with your first responders, train all the time. That's good. Training is important. But what they forget to do is include the community in that training. Who's the most important, and what's the purpose of certain first responders but to protect the community and help the community? But if the community is not involved in training, if the community itself doesn't know how to react and respond or have a family action plan, it's all training for naught, because your CERT team, your first responders are going to be overwhelmed in a disaster. That's the bottom line.
Oh, yeah.
And
you really can't, much as they're a great thing to have, you can't rely on any of them if it becomes an absolute disaster, because they are going to be overwhelmed.
You've got to rely on your neighbors, first and foremost, and your own personal knowledge. That's the bottom line. And that's my purpose. What are my credentials, since you asked, is 19 and a half years in the Army with combat, 4 combat tours. Combat is the ultimate in survival. I was a combat medic, so I'm going to clarify, because I've never had to actually clarify this before, but I'm talking to civilians. So what is a combat medic? A combat medic is, in civilian terms, a paramedic plus. Think of your paramedic and all the things they do, and then add in there CBRN, which is chemical, biological, radiation, and nuclear. And we have, childbirth. We have everything your paramedic does, plus a whole lot more. When we were training, we actually stuck IVs with night vision goggles on. That's how intense it gets as a combat medic sometimes. Along with that, I was OSHA inspection certified by OSHA while I was in the Army as a safety NCO. So I've got the OSHA side. I've got about 20 or 30 FEMA certifications. I'm working on my degree in Homeland Security. Corey and I were talking about this tonight because, bloodborne pathogens. Yeah, I'm certified in hazmat, bloodborne pathogens, HIPAA. I've got a binder with over 100 certifications. Can I remember them all? No, I can't. I really can't. But am I certified to have credentials? I do, but I really don't care about them. Bottom line is experience and credentials. So there you go. Off that rant. It just irritates me. Do I go ring around asking anybody else what their credentials are? No, I don't. I really don't care. Everyone's got something they can input. Everyone's got something they can share, whether you got credentials or not.
Well, yeah, that's just it. I mean, and in all fairness, it's like I've pointed out to people on a number of occasions, in the middle of an emergency, nobody stands there going, "What are your qualifications?" They just don't. You know, if you're stuck on the side of the road and somebody stops to help you, especially in the middle of a snowstorm, nobody says, "Well, do you have a mechanic's license?" You know,
Right. Right. Now, everyone always asks, what's the emergency action plan? Emergency action plan, that is your basic nuts and bolts. You're going to sit your family down. First thing I do anytime I get to a new community, which we're not moving, we're in concrete until I die. Mm-hmm. But anytime I move somewhere, I look around. What are the hazards in this area? And oh my God, I've got a whole list of the hazards in concrete. 2 volcanoes, landslides, earthquakes, I don't know, when's the last earthquake you felt, Corey?
Oh, it wasn't that long ago. We had that big one in 2000, but we've had some since that were pretty good. But, the thing of it is it doesn't matter how long ago it was. I mean, the thing of it is with the Earth, man, it can happen at any time. And when it does, you don't know if it's going to be a 1.3 or a 8.7. You just don't know.
Well, no. Yeah.
Because what you got to remember, for those that aren't familiar, we have the Cascadia Subduction Zone, which is way, like, hundreds of years overdue.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
when it goes, it's going to go in a big way.
And I got asked this a couple of days ago, yesterday, by Bill Jinks in a concrete group. How does the Cascadia Subduction Zone affect concrete? And I answered him tonight, and I told him, look, I didn't ignore your question. I'm going to address this on the show. Because you're talking the potential, which even the experts say makes the San Andreas like a kindergartner. Because what's going to happen? If you look at the videos, if you look at what the experts claim, the Cascadia Subduction Zone for the local folks actually goes through what I'm trying to think of. Help me out here, Corey. The San Juan Islands.
Sorry, the guys in the chat room got me laughing over here. I'm trying not to do that on mic. Yeah, freaking Markham over here. Oh.
You're not helping Markham.
Well, he's helping
anyway.
He's helping in the chat room.
Yeah. All right. Say that again. What
the San Juans. What's that strip of bay between the San Juans and Juanafuca? There we go.
Strait of Juanafuca.
The Juanafuca Strait. Yep. The Strait of Juanafuca is what the Cascadia Subduction Zone actually runs through. And if it goes, it could be the potential of 9.0. How's that going to affect us in concrete?
Well, I don't know, but I do know Hope will have seaside property.
What's going to happen is tsunamis, which will that affect concrete? No. What is going to affect concrete is the fact that we have 5 dams.
They won't be able to handle that kind of water.
No. So what we do have to look at is if the subduction zone goes, you need to head for high ground once the shaking stops. And then you have, Corey, approximately 20 minutes to get to high ground?
If that. It really depends on which dam goes, because like you say, you got 2 on the Baker, and Baker Lake is 2-point-something miles long, and at its deepest, it's over 200 feet deep. And then you've got Ross Dam, which is ungodly huge. Ross Lake goes all the way up into Canada, and it ungodly deep. I mean, it's huge. It's ginormous. And then you've got Diablo and Gorge below it. If the upper one goes, it's taking out the other two, and that is a massive water coming down through there with the amount of force that you wouldn't even be able to think about. You'd have minutes to get to high ground. Minutes.
Yeah.
And it better be real high ground.
The thing that I got to point out to people is that when that happens, you don't actually as many people stopping to help the neighbor while you're running for cover. On the whole, people go and they look for the survivors. The panic ends. You know, I'd love to say people will stop and grab everybody, but it just doesn't happen that way.
No, and that's why you have to hammer drills. You have to hammer the emergency action plan into people. Because personally, I'm not going to have time to go rescue people. Neighbors aren't going to have time to rescue neighbors. You need to be thinking about getting yourself and your family to high ground. That's the bottom line. You can't help anybody that survives if you're dead.
Yeah, it becomes a little problematic.
It is. So, yeah, you don't help your neighbors when the dams break. You move. You move fast.
Well, sadly, and I've seen it happen before, sadly, many times family doesn't help family. You know, I'd love to say they do, and they talk about it, and that's another reason to have the action plan and the practices and what have you, because the odds are you're not going to be thinking that clearly when it happens. You know,
so
one of the go ahead.
Yeah, so I have the emergency action plan, and I will be passing them out. Come May, we will be having disaster training and classes, and I will actually have emergency action plans to pass out. It's about 2 or 3 pages. Then we have a farm action plan, which is completely different because farms, well, that's a completely different scenario. You got a lot of animals, you got cattle, you got crops, you got, it depends on the farm. You got a completely different scenario to look at from an action plan. So first thing you do is you get your location for your family to meet. It's kind of like a fire drill. Same thing. A disaster is a disaster is a disaster. Whether it's a fire, earthquake, landslide, it doesn't matter. We won't even talk about the terror side. That's a whole different scenario. Not tonight anyway. That might be a different show. So what we're going to do too is come May, June on S4, we will be talking more summer-related disasters. We'll talk about wildfires, things of that nature. But we're going to start doing disaster preparedness seasonally. So first of all, you find your location for your family to meet outside the house. For us, it's by a cherry tree or in the middle of the yard, away from trees to fall, away from power lines to fall. Then you want to find a contact person that's out of the area, at least 100 miles away. For me, it's my aunt in Idaho. Now, is Idaho going to be affected by some of these disasters? It could be. If if Yellowstone blows, then yeah, they're going to be affected. But if it's a local disaster, then yeah, it's going to be my aunt in Idaho. That way, if the family gets separated, they all know to call my aunt in Idaho.
Right.
And she will be your contact person. That yes, Anthony and Cheyenne called. Your mom's called, whatever the case. And if anyone in the family hasn't called, we've got an issue. So you want your outside of the area contact person. I would personally recommend 2. Because if it's, my aunt in Idaho, and it happens to be a major disaster that affects both states, Washington and Idaho, then I'm going to have somebody I know very well in, say, the East Coast or the South, that's far away enough that it's not going to affect the entire country. Now, something I don't have an answer for tonight, but I'm going to bring up is I don't know what our school's policy on emergency action, as far as if they have an emergency action plan. How do we pick up our kids if there's a disaster? Where are the kids going to go if there's a major disaster? their actual plan, I know, is to shelter in place. If it's dams, they're not going to shelter in place. We need to find out what their policy is.
Well, I think actually the school up here is supposed to be high enough. I quote me saying as supposed to be high enough up on the hill that it wouldn't be affected by it. In fact, one of the things I remember being on the council out here in town was that they were planning on building what they called a secondary access road, which they haven't got done yet because, of course, funds are a pain in the butt when you got to go through all the red tape. But a secondary access road that goes up another section there to the back way up to the school area for just that purpose in case the dam's broke. That's supposed to be what that's for, because apparently that area there is high enough up that it supposedly wouldn't be affected. Now, do I believe that completely? I'm a little skeptical. Personally, I think I'd be heading for someplace a little bit higher than that, but just my thoughts.
Well, when you're dealing with flooding, high is...
And I can understand them bussing them out, but where are they going to bus them? I was suggesting Burpee Hill, but Burpee Hill is also sliding.
Well, that's a good place to put them. Could be fun.
Right. Burpee Hill would actually be the ideal hill to, drive up or run up if you have to. But Burpee Hill's unstable as well. If you're on the south side of the river, which is our side, you've got the Dulles Bridge, and you've got the bridge by 530. Then you got South Cascadia Highway, which is a landslide hazard, and still in the channel of floodwater, which is going to come through from the dams. So personally, I'm heading up Haystack, and there's a gate. And they won't give me a key, but that gate's coming open. I'm telling you. When it comes to a disaster, I'll get that gate open.
One way or the other, it'll come off the hinges if it has to.
Yep. Keys magically, locks magically disappear whether you have a key or not when there's a disaster.
Yeah.
Where's Markham?
Quite frankly, so when you think about it, so does the idea of restricted area.
No, it's just owned by a logging company. It's owned by a logging company, and they won't share the key. That's all it is.
That's what bolt cutters are for.
Exactly. There's Markham. Stop playing in the chat
part
room
of my...
and contribute.
Oh, I'm listening. No, I just... I was just telling them how I'm hoping to buy a chunk of land up by you.
Well, if we get our way, we're going to buy that field. It's going to be a Forest Moon Paranormal compound.
I'm presuming that's a high point.
No, it's at the base of Haystack Mountain. We'll be safe. We'll be heading up the hill.
Well, at least you'll be sitting on bedrock.
Well, we'll be very well armed anyway. I could just see a compound of Coopers and Markhams. It would be, of course, we fear no evil. We are the evil.
No.
No,
we're not a militia.
No, we're not a militia. We're just,
good God,
we're just people who appreciate our privacy and don't want none. It's kind of if you don't bring any, there won't be any. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, well, that's just it. I'm about as ill prepared as I can get. On the other hand, a block away from me is my best friend, who is better trained in survival and all of the outback than most people that actually take the course in it. He grew up in it, So brings
Trippin's just bad. Do you see Trippin's comment? He's just bad. I'm not going to say what he said. That's just bad.
Yeah, that is. Realistically, that is.
Oh, anyway.
Well, I remember
moving along.
I remember somebody talking to me about moving down to the coast at the time, that everybody was really worried about the quakes and what have you. They were planning on moving right down into Vancouver, and I told the guy, I says, "Well, make sure you take a surfboard." And he goes, "But I'm moving to the 14th floor." I says, "Yeah, that's why I set a surfboard." But all kidding aside, if you don't know what you're doing, or if you know that you're short on the education side where it comes to emergencies, or survival, make certain you know somebody that is well versed.
The thing is, you can make a bug out bag just out of stuff you have. I don't know. It seems like every time we've moved, or every time my ex and I ever went camping, we would buy stuff for the camping trip. Then you come back home and it's like, oh, we had 3 or 4 of those already. I mean, all you got to do, just think of things you might need for a bug out bag. And I highly recommend, because you can get them dirt cheap, getting some P-38s and P-51s. And no, I'm not talking about the fighter aircraft. Coop's probably got a blister or a callus on his thumb to this day from using a P-38 or a P-51.
Oh, I've still got a P-38.
Yeah, I've got a case of them. But you get some. They're just a very basic, simple folding can opener. They don't weigh anything. They fold up, and that's part of the problem. Is where is that stupid thing? You go digging looking for. Just get a Ziploc bag. You should have Ziploc bags anyway in your kit. But, have a Ziploc bag full of stuff like that. And you can buy a Swiss Army knife, or even a fake version of a Swiss Army knife now for, $10, a decent one.
Well, no, even for our listeners, we've got Harbor Freight here in Mount Vernon now. So Harbor Freight, you can get all this stuff at Harbor Freight for cheap, dirt cheap.
See, now, when you guys are talking P-38s and P-51s, pardon my being obtuse, but I thought you guys were talking about a gun, and I'm thinking, really? That's not necessary.
Oh, yeah, a Walther P-38. There's a lot of things were named P-38. That's right.
That would open a can, too, but...
Well, actually, my bug out bag has a little 9mm in it, based on it's a Beretta design. It's a nice little, very, very minimal moving parts on this gun. Mm-hmm. It was based on the Beretta Cougar design. The company that builds them, I can't bring the name up. It won't come to me, but they're made under license. Beretta actually owns the company that makes these things. And it's a great little, easy to clean, easy to break down, very reliable little 9mm pistol. That's right there in the top of my bug out bag, plus a couple boxes of shells. First thing I put in my bag. And everything else,
we were just talking about this the other day, is, firearms are great, but your bullets ain't going to last forever. And if you're a reloader, your reloading material's not going to last forever either. So I would always recommend a second weapon choice besides the fire.
And something, this is why you always, where it comes to defense of that nature, a knife is always handy, and I mean a good solid knife. I don't mean one of these paring knives.
No.
I've got a very good lockback. Actually, the lockback I have, it actually has a bolt that you insert that ensures that the blade stays locked out, and it's just weighs about a pound and a half. It's a very heavy, stout knife, and it's designed for being lashed to a point to make the ultimate pointy stick.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And much as I absolutely encourage people to work together, the sad reality is panic does really dangerous things to people.
Oh yeah.
I've seen it even in apartment fires. The panic that people go through right at the outset, is
but you know what? Here's how you take care of panic. You stay prepared. You have your drills drilled in your head to where it should be second nature. If something happens, you should have your drills down to where you know exactly to grab your bag and head for the hills.
Well, this is one of the reasons why I keep telling people, get to know your neighbor. Especially in the case of an emergency, knowing your neighbor can be the difference between survival and not.
Mm-hmm. Now we're going to talk having an emergency supply kit in your home and business and your child. So things you need to be looking at, and we'll get into the supply kit here shortly, but when it comes to your kids, be thinking outside the box, because your kids need something to do. Coloring books, crayons, a deck of cards. If you got a baby, remember to put diapers, wipes, formula, things like that in your bag. And I push this all the time, know who your disabled are in the community, because they should be the first ones. If it's not something you got to run from, your disabled in the community should be the first ones you're checking on.
Yeah, because they're going to be the ones that can't go anywhere.
Exactly. Now,
right. If it really gets bad, you have somebody to eat. No, I'm kidding.
You're wrong. You're wrong. And now I know you was going to go there.
Too late. You already did.
Oh.
Well,
so if you're on medication, make sure to grab some medication to take with you.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm trying to stay on track here, Markham. You're killing me.
You remember that thing about emergency? We have to deal with people like Markham.
Uh-huh. Exactly. And they're out there.
Yeah.
So, talking about the children again, do our children have disaster kits at school? Now, when it comes to concrete, I don't believe so, because they're a shelter-in-place school. I have been talking to the principal at the elementary school, and I know she's working on drills and things like that, and that's great. So that covers that. Learn your community's warning signs. Backing up real quick, know where your fire and police department are. Well, that's not going to help concrete too much, because the fire departments are volunteer run. The volunteer firemen probably aren't going to be there. Police, well, good luck finding a sheriff. And I don't mean that in any kind of disrespect, but there's only 2 deputies that run upriver. You're not going to find them. They're going to be busy. So don't go to them for help. Don't go to them for help. Rely on yourself. Rely on your community.
Absolutely.
So learn your community's warning signs. Well, we have sirens for the dams. And I answer this question at least 1 to 2 times a week in the concrete group. How come there were sirens? Well, we have a volunteer fire department. Anytime there's an emergency, those sirens go off to call in the firemen. Every, I want to say, 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month, you'll hear those sirens calling the firemen in for training. Now, at 6 p.m. is when they actually do the dam siren testing. And, then you get the question, well, how do you know when it's a test or when it's real? Well, if it's real, it's not going to shut off. It will go off until the water hits.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way you look at it. Mm-hmm. It's kind of along the same lines as fire alarms and what have you. If they're a test, people tend to shut them off in a hurry.
Yeah. If it's a test, it'll go off, I believe, 2 revolutions, and then it's done.
Yeah, and again, that's something to check with the... that's something that the locals should check, is what the test consists of.
Right. So that's the only alarm that I'm aware of is the dam alarm and, well, yeah, the dam alarm. And so we have a city fire department, which again is volunteer, and then we have a county fire department, which has 2 fire stations, but again, it's volunteer. Does anybody man it 24 hours? No, they don't. To me, that's an issue, but there's not much you can do. There really ain't.
Well, yeah,
so,
unfortunately, or,
it plays the way you play into politics, getting into that area, and we're not going to do that. So, I encourage everyone to learn first aid and CPR. And where can you do that? Red Cross. And some of the fire departments actually offer it. What you'll get from the fire departments quite often is actually, and this is what I want you to look at, is first responder first aid. Because their CPR class covers defib. I know for locals also it is. It is, because defibrillators actually aren't that expensive. $200 to $300.
We also, around here, we have some people that teach CPR with defibrillation, the whole works, and they go around to different communities, and they do them at fire stations, they do them at hospitals, they do them, at community buildings to get them done. They usually charge a small fee for it. I know of at least one person myself that, if there's anybody out there that wants to learn CPR locally, I will hook you up with them. They charge fairly and are probably the best within the 3 counties for teaching it. So,
and I'll be getting with you on that because mine expires in March.
Okay.
I need to get mine renewed. And maybe we'll look at getting a group together because I know there's plenty in the community that would like to get those done. So.
Yeah, and they do groups. So.
Right. So have a first aid kit. We're going to get into what goes into my first aid kit here shortly, and what goes into your car. And I already went into combat medic versus paramedic. I do not do anything outside my scope, which right now is only a civilian first aid card. Now, if it comes to life and death, if I had the means, I would probably do it if I had to.
Yeah, but when you're dealing with emergency, shall we say, protocol, you sort of have to overlook. I mean, still, follow protocol as best you can, but let's face it, in the case, like, if those dams go, the last thing you're going to be able to take time for is making sure you do everything in the right order.
Yeah. Now, if it's a car accident, I'll do my first responder type stuff, but not above my scope. If it's a major disaster, then everything goes out the window.
Yeah. I mean, heck, I'm not trained in first rule of thumb is if it's a major disaster, then do what you can.
Well, one of the things to do is just take your bag and just cram it with everything you think you could possibly need. Pick it up and realize that if you had to take off cross-country with that damn thing, it's too heavy. Now lay everything out.
You know what?
What do you really need of this stuff?
But here's the thing.
I've got communications, health, communications, and survival. Basically pare it down to what you got to have.
We're going to get to communications here later on too. Here's the thing, though, because there's been a lot of discussion in the concrete group about disaster and about survival. And somebody asked, my bug out bag's heavy. If I had to actually run with it, I couldn't. And that's what you have a vehicle for. And I highly recommend you get a 4x4. Keep your 72-hour pack, otherwise known as the bug out bag, in your 4x4.
Well, I have to, I have to say on that with the 4x4, I think that really depends on where you live. Now, if you're in a country area, like we are upriver, out in the county part, yeah. I mean, if you're down in the city and the flatlands, you don't necessarily need a 4x4. You just need a good vehicle. But yeah, when you get up in this area up here, yeah, it's not a bad idea to have a 4-wheel drive.
And Elizabeth's talking about the zombie apocalypse. You know what? That's going to be another show. We're gonna hit zombie apocalypse, damn it. And I agree, Markham, with the Midland hand crank flashlights and hand crank radio. I highly recommend. You can get them relatively cheap, and that goes in your pay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
and
yeah,
of course,
that
solar
little
power
Midland,
is a good backup.
That little Midland uses an FM band it's designated family band. There's not a lot of traffic on it. You can recharge the 2 portable handsets off of the main base unit that's got the crank on, and you can actually charge your cell phones off of that. Most of the hand crank radios come with a cell phone charger of some kind.
I like those units because people need to think outside the box. In that, what do you use daily that you cannot comfortably live without? I believe in survival, but I also believe in surviving comfortably. That's why I have a hand.
I know my kids would want me to take. My kids would want me to take the PS4 with them.
Right.
I'm damn certain they can't live without that. But
in a way, though, it's probably a good idea to have some kind of battery-powered electronic distraction for kids, because if you're in a situation, it's going to take a while for that to sink in. Self-centered kids can be. It's like, well, I want to go. They have no idea. Just in everyday life, when a crisis hits, they can't think past themselves. No. If you get into zombie apocalypse or crap hitting the fan of biblical proportions, you're still going to have the same whiny brat kids that are going to not understand why they can't play their PS4 or engage with their it's going to take away. They're going to grow up fast, but it's going to take a little while.
Here's the difference. My son. You mentioned zombies. He's going to say, "Oh, I learned all about zombies. You have to always double tap. You must always wear your seatbelt. You must always cardio." Yeah, he watches Zombieland all the time. Mm-hmm. So he knows all about the double tap, and he's only 5. So, yeah, you tell him zombies, and he's going to be running.
Well, like Joe, I think it was Joe Monk pointed out earlier, a pony stick doesn't run out of bullets.
Exactly.
So, the idea of having a machete, an axe, some kind of reusable sharp weapon. I personally like I think it's made by the company Camelus, and it's called the Predator. It is a very, very well made, survival machete. I have hacked and, I've used that thing for just about anything, including, chopping roots out, digging up trees, and it's still held up. And you really can't beat one of those Vietnam-era trenching tools if you can find one. The folding shovel that had those things. You can do physical damage to somebody with one of those things real easy.
E-tool you can find at any Army surplus store.
Well, you don't even have to think of these things as a weapon. I mean, we're talking tools here. These are tools you need, not just you don't even think about it as a weapon. It's tools.
In an emergency, that Vietnam era E-tool, it's got a serrated edge, and mine's got an actual more like a single-sided beveled edge, and then it's got the corrugated edge. I see the damage it does when you're trying to dig up a tree or just using it for its intended purpose. You could cleave a skull with that thing real easy, and I'm sure it's been done.
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, anything comes to mind where it comes to self-protection. I mean, even that buck that you've got, the lock blade that you've got, never mind popping the blade, drop the thing into your hand, and you've got yourself, a whole lot of impact.
Okay, we're running out of time with all the material we got to go through. But I do have a couple questions. Trippin wants to know what the best survivalist show to help learn. Personally, I don't watch TV. I looked for 49th Parallel on YouTube. He's, I believe he's an ex-Marine. If not, he learned. Look for 49th Parallel, join their channel, and I like the material he's got. As far as TV, I don't trust any of them. Personal preference. And know how to shut off your water, your gas, and your electricity. If there's a disaster, I wouldn't turn it off just because there is a disaster. Go out, if you smell gas, turn it off. Always know where to turn it off, though. And it's your water and your electricity. Keep small cash in your kit, because keep it in your mind there won't be any banks or ATMs. Power goes out. And remember, your cell phones are going to go out, because the towers are, most of your cell phones are run on towers. And that leads us to ham radio, and it's being discussed in the chat room. Now, what I have is a Baofeng Icon. It ran $60 on Amazon. It's a handheld. It's much like a handheld CV. It has a pretty good range, but if you hook up to your cell phone, it actually will expand the range. It's basically a scanner that you can actually talk to. Now, it's illegal if you talk to the scanner. Don't do it now without a disaster. But you'll wind up talking to the sheriff, and, then they'll find you, and, that's not a good scenario. But
that's a really bad way.
It is. But they're $60, Amazon. I know it's being discussed in the chat room. Ham radio is the best way to go. Depending on what you want to do with it. You have to get a license. You have to take a test. You have to take some schooling with it. And some of the units are expensive, which is why I encourage CB radio. Now, a CB radio, you can put it in your rig. It's always running as long as you have a good battery in your truck. Channel 9 is the emergency frequency for CB radio. So it'd be just like using 911 if somebody is monitoring your channel 9. If you don't speak English, have cards. I think most of our listeners speak English. But if you don't speak English, or you know somebody that doesn't, have them make cards in English that have their name, their address, medical information, things like that. Conduct earthquake drills, fire drills. Should be done every 6 months with your family. So you drill it into your kids' heads where they're supposed to go. All the routes out of your house. Make sure the routes in your house are clear so they can get out. If there's a fire, you stop, drop, and roll. You stay lower to the ground. In fact, the kids just had fire drills with the fire department here about 2 months ago. And that was pretty cool. The fire department here goes to the schools and talks to the kids. So that's a good thing about this community. So, documents. I know everybody brings this up. I have a briefcase that has everything we need for documents, from the mortgage information, the house insurance, the car insurance, Social Security cards, birth certificates, medical records are important for the VA. Anything that you ain't gonna, is gonna be a pain to find after the disaster, keep in a briefcase. All you gotta do is grab it and go.
Yeah, and make it a good briefcase. The thing I found some people do is they grab what amounts to a cloth bag and say, well, that'll work. And technically it will, but quite frankly, if you can get a solid one, you're far better off. Like they've got little metal ones here that don't weigh a lot, but from an emergency standpoint, they're a heck of a sight better. Yeah,
well, not to mention, go to any secondhand store, any Goodwill, any Salvation Army. You can get a hellaciously good briefcase, one of those places, usually for a couple bucks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, there's tons of them out there.
All the paperwork in the world is useless in water.
I just went to Harbor Freight not that long ago. In fact, I posted some pictures on my Facebook after I got done with it, making my little paranormal kit. I think it was like $20 for a nice aluminum case that I could put all of that stuff in. I could take the foam stuff out, and I could stack paperwork in there for days if I wanted to. They're not expensive, and it's completely functional for what you need for that type of thing.
One of the smart things to do also is get one of those meal sealers. I mean, you seal a meal. I don't know the brand. Yeah. I've got one, and stuff like that. Vacuum seal like birth certificates, things that you're going to have, things that you need to refer to, but you don't have to refer to them every day. Seal that stuff.
Even use technology. I mean, I would say, I have a lot of that stuff scanned onto the computer and saved on a memory stick. Because even after the disaster, you can go to the library and have the stuff printed out again. If you had to.
Yeah, exactly.
Worst case scenario. And Elizabeth brings up an excellent point with the wind-up NOAA weather radio. They come with flashlights. They have, and like you said earlier, Markham, they have the solar panel for the batteries. They have cell phone chargers. I mean, they come up with some nice ones. You can get a lot of that stuff on redcross.org or redcross.gov, one of the two.
Well, you can find a lot of this stuff, like a little handheld. My dad got me one for Christmas a few years ago. It's a handheld AM/FM radio flashlight.
Yep.
And it was like $19. It was like an end cap. It was at a Walmart or something. It was like where they put it on an end cap for an impulse buy. That could be a lifesaver in the right situation. If I find a gadget I like, I get a dozen of them, so I probably got a dozen hand crank radios around the house somewhere.
Okay, guys.
Sounds like we're up to first break.
We are. It is time to go on that break. When we come back from break, we are going to continue our discussion on winter preparedness and survival. Tonight on our panel, we have Eric Markham, our F&P scientist. We have R. Keith Andrews, an astrologer and alien specialist. Myself, Corey Reese, and Eric Cooper of Forest Moon Paranormal. Join us every Saturday night at midnight Pacific Standard Time. You can find us on Spreaker.com, SpacedOutRadio.com, and The Fringe FM. And now for you local listeners, you can catch the show Wednesdays on KSVU 90.1 on your FM dial from 10 a.m. to noon. Check out Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott Monday through Friday, Spaced Out Weekend with Joe Roop Saturdays, and Elizabeth Anglin and Cosmic Passport on Sundays, all at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Also check out The Fringe FM with shows like Lighting the Void with Joe Roop and a plethora of other good shows. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Would you like someone you can trust to look into it? We have just the place. The SOR Sightlines Report is the place for you to find answers. Whether it's Bigfoot, UFOs, Dogman, ghosts, aliens, or anything strange, the Sightlines Report will get you connected with one of our expert researchers to find out what's going on. All of your personal information is kept 100% confidential. The SOR Sightlines Report, a place for you to find the answers you need. Only at spacedoutradio.com.
Welcome to Spaced Out Saturdays with me, Dave Cruz from Beyond the Strange. Our weekly feature on spacedoutradio.com will take you around the world discussing everything from the paranormal to the latest conspiracies from the top guests in their fields. We won't leave any story uncovered. Spaced Out Saturdays at spacedoutradio.com starting 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed on tonight's show by tonight's hosts and guests are not necessarily those of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays, Spaced Out Sundays, or spacedoutradio.com. Listener discretion is advised. And now back for hour number 2, we have Corey Ruiz, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal, and S4. You can find Forest Moon Paranormal on Facebook. And for more information on S4, visit spacedoutradio.com. And now, here's Eric Cooper and Corey Ruiz.
Welcome back. For those of you just joining us tonight, we are discussing winter preparedness and survival. Something a little bit different than what we usually do, but hey, it's kind of important right now at this time of year. On our panel tonight, we have Eric Markham and R. Keith Andrews. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Always fun to be here.
Oh, it's a riot.
Where's Markham?
He left.
Oh,
I'm here.
He's in the background.
So, let's switch gears and talk about during a disaster. So during a disaster, you've done your drills, your family knows how to respond. So once you're safe, you want to get out your hand-cranked radio or monitor your frequencies on your CB, monitor your Baofeng handheld, whatever the case is. and listen for the all clear. Listen for updates, things of that nature. And I got to bring up San Andreas, the movie. Excellent movie. Excellent points that they actually bring up that are real world of what to do. That was a well done movie in disaster, survival.
Yeah, it really was.
Because when she went to the fire truck and got, they bring up a lot of good points. And a movie, if you haven't seen it, watch San Andreas, because that's how you should react. She went to the fire truck, she got the emergency radio. And then she heard, oh my God, there's a tsunami coming. Yeah. Well, excellent points, excellent movie to watch. You don't want to use your telephone, but for emergency calls only, if your telephone's working. Because remember, your cell phone's probably not going to work. Towers are going to be out. There's probably not going to be a 911 call center because, well, the towers operate the 911 call center. So oftentimes, there won't be 911. You're going to be self-reliant. You're going to have to rely on your community and your neighbors. Again, get a CB, get ham licensed, get a ham radio. On your CB, channel 9 is your emergency call only. So if you're taking notes, write that down. Because if you get on your CB and you go to channel 9 and you're not talking emergencies, it's kind of the same. If they can trace you, you'll get the same reaction if you dial 911 and hang up. Believe me, done it.
Yeah, they been there, done that, got the ball cap.
Yeah. If you get told to evacuate, don't be brave and say, I'm going to write it out. No, you need to evacuate. And take your emergency kit. And we're going to get to the emergency kit here in a minute. After the disaster, if you go back home, it's suggested by FEMA and Red Cross, you open your doors. You don't just go walking in. You open your doors and air it out because you don't know what's happened to your house. You don't know if there's gas lines ruptured. You don't know, what you're going to be walking into. If your house looks unstable, don't go in. Have it inspected. Now, I want to bring up an important point, too. If, it happens all the time upriver. Power outages. And people bring their generators inside. Or they turn on a propane heater inside. Not advisable. That's how you get carbon monoxide poisoning. Carbon monoxide is a gas that you don't smell. You can't see it. It just hits you. And you'll get dizzy. It's basically sucking the oxygen out of your system.
One thing I would like to add in here real quick, as far as propane heaters go, they do have some indoor safe ones that have sensors on them that will go out if there's not enough oxygen in the room. However, if you're going to use one in there, make sure that it is an indoor safe one before you use it. That is the major point that you got to do. Exactly. Yes, there are some you can use indoor, but you better make sure that it is that before you use it. And if you're going to be getting prepared for winter issues, let's just even say just the power going out. That's something you should probably look into anyways, is finding one of those so that you have some heat, where it's cold.
Exactly. And what we also have, because if your power is out, your stove's not working, make a designated room where you can shut all the doors and just keep that room warm. Everyone sleeps in a sleeping bag on the floor or whatever.
Yeah.
And always have a good supply of candles. We do. I suggest tea lights. Tea lights are the best candles for putting light in your house while or if you have a lantern, something like that. Battery powered lanterns are best. And barbecues are awesome, but don't use them inside. We have a propane barbecue. That's outside. The kids think it's great because we get to go outside and barbecue when the power's out. and so it's family bonding. Power's out, we don't worry about it. We have a plan A, plan B, and a plan C if we have to run.
And especially
the big mistakes people make is they'll have charcoal left over from summer.
Yeah.
Charcoal produces carbon monoxide, and carbon monoxide bonds the heme in your blood, I think 3 or 4 times more readily than oxygen does. So even if you're found in time, you're kind of screwed, because it takes a while to get the carboxyhemoglobin to lessen in your body. You're going to be hypoxic for quite a while. And it's good. A rule of thumb is, if you're going to be using a propane heater or something that, the power's out, crack a window. Crack a window open. Or, leave the door slightly ajar, so oxygen is coming into the room.
The other thing, especially where it comes to barbecues and what have you, for pity's sakes, make sure the kids know how to use them, how to light them, given their age appropriate, obviously.
Right.
Right. Because you may not be the only person you may not be available to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Now, if you're stocking food, you want to check your food and your water for contamination. Now, the rule of thumb with FEMA and Red Cross is, for your plan, you want 1 gallon of water per person per day. Now, I have a family of 7 that lives on my property. That's 7 gallons of water per day for 3 days, because they want you to have a 3-day pack. That's 21 gallons of water. That's a lot of water. But you go to the dollar store, you can get, you can get water cheap.
Can at Costco,
and then you don't
too.
have to worry about it. Say again?
You can get it cheap at Costco, too. I mean, it's cents on the dollar for big packs of water. You can get, 5-6 cases of that water, and you'd be easily good for a few days for several people to have water.
Yeah. Of course, the logical question there that I'm sure some people are wondering is where it comes to water. Let's say, they get off of this show and they go, well, I should go and get that. How long, once you've got the sealed water, how long can you actually keep it before it becomes a problem?
I don't have an accurate answer for that, but water does last a while, and they usually have expiration dates, so we need to rotate it out.
Well, and on top of that, most of the water that you get, bottled up is all, as they say, pasteurized. So, it's going to last a long time. You're going to have to worry more about the plastic bottles over a period of time starting to give you a problem with the water than the water itself, because that water has been purified. So, it's really, I would imagine, easily that water could probably last just sitting there for a year without any trouble. You shouldn't have an expiration really quite that soon on the water.
No, water lasts, and it's going to sound gross, but folks, you've got water in your house.
Mm-hmm.
You've got in the back of your toilet tank is pure. It's pure water. It's clean. It sounds gross, but it is clean water. It hasn't gone through your toilet yet. It comes straight from your well or your city water, and it's clean water.
As long as you're not putting something like 2,000 flushes or
totally.
Toilet. One of the things to remember too, like in your situation where you have to have 21 gallons of water per day, you're better off having a cistern out back or a pool or something that collects rainwater, and then giving everybody in the family a life straw or some kind of having a purification method, because that way you've lots of water alternatives.
What we're going to do actually is get they sell those solar panel kits for RVs, and for like $250 you can get the solar panels and the battery at Harbor Freight. So this summer we're going to actually get one of those kits and put it on the well pump. So even when the power's out, we will still have water.
Yeah,
our pump's from a well.
I mean, even
that's a good thing, because under let's say the worst happens and the power for a city gets knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what powers the pumps for your tap?
Yeah.
The city power supply.
That's when you got to worry about no water.
And it's something
where you're out in the country and you have a well. You're out is have an old and you can still buy them at Farm and Fleet. Get a frost-proof, hand cranked. I think that
and we've looked into that
design's been around for 200 years.
Right, and we've actually looked into that too.
See, something that dawned on me, that just dawned on me with what you were saying there, because I don't live in the outback, I live in the heart of the city, but you have a power outage, getting a solar panel battery charger that you can run a fridge off can save you a heck of a lot of hassles if you haven't been evacuated from the house and you're just dealing with a power failure.
Right.
One of the nice things about concrete is that even if the power is off, our water here in town is spring fed. So it's pretty much all gravity feed, even though the pressure is really good. So even if the power is out, there's water here. There's plenty of water in this town. So, anybody who's out of town running on a well could actually come into town and get water from in town, which is kind of a nice thing. Now, the other thing is, you guys talked about life straws. I've got a few of those around here in the house because, hey, you never know. And that's something especially that should be in a bug out bag because you never know where you're going to end up, and having something like that you can filter some water out, because water's life. Water is life. Even over food, water is life.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, you can live a long time without food. Water is going to kill you within a couple of days, just a few days.
Three days.
These things are like $20. You can get the life, you can buy, there's a ton of them. There's the Life Straw. There's even one, if you're... I like the idea of the Life Straw because all you got to do is suck water through it. But there's a little, it's called SteriPen, where it's a little UV, basically it's a UV light that purifies water. But, Life Straw, a Pure, P-U-R, they've got a pre-filter and it's a pump. And, you can drink out of a mud puddle with that damn thing because it'll get the dirt out, and when you get it into your canteen, it's pretty much just water. It's that good. So there's a lot of, and all this stuff is cheap. You don't want to be gasping for, drinking out of a mud puddle and getting sick, thinking, "Damn, if I just spent $15 on a Life Straw, this would be a lot more palatable." There's no excuse not to have one of these. They're that cheap.
And here's the thing. You don't have to break the bank getting a kit together. Take a little bit from each payday and get you an item and then stash it away. And eventually you've got your ultimate, survival kit. And go to
you go digging through your house, you'll probably find half the stuff. How many of us know exactly what's in our house? Like I was saying earlier, you probably got 4. As many times as I've moved, gone camping, done things, been on a trip, and needed something I didn't have, if you dig through that drawer that everybody's got at least one of those drawers in their house, it's just full of crap.
Gee, if
you probably got half your bug out, you probably got half your bug out bag sitting there unknown to you because it's in the junk drawer.
If they've only got one junk drawer, they're way behind what I've got.
Look,
I've got. Well, the only reason I don't have a lot of junk drawers is I got a garage full of crap.
I can within about 10 minutes, probably easily put together a basic bug out bag for my house. I have got a camping kit out there that has, basic pots and pans you would need for cooking, and I think I've got a little propane stove type of thing in there. I've got the Life Straws around here. I've got several multi-tools, which is a beautiful thing to have if you're going to be doing a bug out. Silverware. I've got battery lanterns and flashlights. I know we've got tea light candles around here as well. There's just, I can think of within 10 minutes I could put together a basic bug out bag with just the basic stuff that I need. I've got a ton of canned food stuff that's in the cupboard that would be easily to just grab a bunch of that out, and box food stuff. It would not take me long to be able to throw something together, throw it in my 4-wheel drive Blazer, and be able to bug out.
Well, Phil, do you remember when you'd come back off deployment, like if you were doing a field exercise, field problem, come back? Remember how everybody would throw the MREs away?
Oh God, yeah. And I had a buddy. My buddy ran supply, so at one point I had 2 cases of MREs. So yeah, MREs are common, and the ultimate meal. It's got 3,000 calories, if not more. So yeah, you look at the civilian side though. Yeah, they are somewhat pricey. But when you go grocery shopping, so that's. Say again. Oh God, the MRE.
If you buy a dehydrator, like the stacked shelf dehydrator and a vacuum sealer.
Yeah.
Right.
You can just like, and my parents used to do stuff like this and make it sort of like a family game night type of thing. You dry the stuff, you prep it, and you don't have to spend all weekend doing it. During the week you get everybody together and you slice apples. You dehydrate apples. Then the weekend comes and it's like, well, let's vacuum seal the apples. Everybody has, one kid cuts the bags to length, and just the other one puts measures how the apples into the bag. You make a family activity out of it. You make your own MRE. By the time you've taken the apples and sliced them and dried them and vacuum sealed them, my God, you can. And you can do that with just about anything. And go back into canning. People don't can like they used to. You can do a huge bowl, make a huge pot of soup, feed everybody their soup, and then can the rest.
Yeah, and it works.
Stuff like that preserves in a mason jar.
But I think a lot of people are scared of canners and of canning. But they offer classes here upriver on how to properly can and the safety use of a pressure canner, things like that. So, you're scared of canning because of the process, or you're scared of canning because of contamination or the pressure canner. They have classes for that help you with it through the extension office, through the resource center.
You don't even have to have a pressure canner. You can can without it. It's all about getting things certain temperature and getting them cooled off.
I learned how to.
I grew up canning.
I was taught
you can
how
do
to
that
can using an oven.
It's all a matter of having the main thing is the jar has to be clean.
Yes.
And after you heat the jar, as soon as that lid goes boink, as it cools down, it pulls that lid down. It's sealed, and then you throw the ring on it, and generally anybody who's canned or put stuff up, when you bring a can up from the base or a jar up, and you look at it and the color is off, you probably know something. People use a little common sense. If your green beans are lavender,
that's probably
something got in there. Yeah. Or they went from being green to gray. It's probably time to get rid of them.
Yeah, we can cite all kinds of examples there, but one of the biggest differences I found with canned, like applesauce, as compared to your store-bought, canned applesauce tends to be darker because you don't put the preservative in it to keep it. You don't put the toxin in it to keep it white.
Right, it looks like it's got a cinnamon. Yeah, exactly. And if you're my mom, you put it up with cinnamon in it anyway to hide the spoilage. No.
Right.
Nice. Oh, just spice.
Okay. No, but that's the kind of stuff you can do. It's not that hard. It's a matter of not just saying, oh, that's a great idea, we ought to do that someday. It's do it today. Even if all you do is start. If you just get your dehydrator. Tomorrow buy the apples or the fruits or whatever you're going to dry.
Now, switching up, let's talk about winter. Always be aware of the forecast. Is snow coming? I mean, the forecast isn't always accurate, especially upriver, because our winter changes quick. Our weather changes quick. But have an idea of what's coming. And again, like I said earlier, have your safe room ready, or at least picked out. Where's the family going to go to stay warm? Now, talking about vehicles, you dress in layers. You dress in layers of lightweight clothing. You don't want wool. You don't want. You want to dress in layers of lightweight clothing so you can, as you get hot, you take off a layer. You don't want to sweat because then your sweat turns cool and it makes it colder. I can't ever emphasize enough having extra socks in your rig because a lot of your heat goes out your feet and out the top of your head.
Yep. And
well, even having, if you're in a car,
right.
One of the things to have in your car is just like a foot sack. It's basically this puffy down looking. It's like a big, huge boot that you stick both feet in, and drawstring at the top. There's a brand name, and I can't think of what the. Or if you're handy with a sewing machine, hell, buy the cloth. The quilted cloth at Walmart, and make your own. It's a real basic, simple. If nothing else, just make a drawstring bag out of a quilted material that you can put both feet in.
Yeah.
Because if you're sitting in a car, you ain't worried about walking. First off, you need to stay with your car.
Yes.
And then
don't ever leave your car.
The feet. Keep the feet warm.
And we're
it's also
a
good idea to have
some
dryer duct.
Yeah, duct tape.
Yeah, duct tape.
So what goes in Cooper's truck? Well, what goes in Cooper's truck is very extensive in that you don't have to have everything I carry in my truck. My truck is geared for road rescue. So by all means, you don't have to carry everything. Don't go you get everything that I've got because, well, it gets expensive. I've got 2 ABC fire extinguishers. I carry extra blankets and a very extensive toolbox, which I'm not going to get into that list. A jack. Don't use a damn scissor jack. They're useless. They're unstable. And if you have to change a tire or something like that, you don't want to trust a scissor jack. Go get a good jack. They're only about 30 or 40 bucks at AutoZone, O'Reilly's, any kind of car store. They're not expensive, and they're usually get up to about 2,000 to 3,000 pounds. Get a good jack. Small shovel, jumper cables, tow rope, extra blankets. Your 72-hour pack goes in there. Extra clothes, hat, gloves, road flares. Why road flares? Well, if I come upon an accident, it's dark, they come in handy. If you are in the snow and you get stuck, road flares are going to be very visible for a couple hours. And hopefully you can be found within that time. And like we said earlier in the show, always make sure somebody knows where you're going. So if you don't show up, you know where to start looking. I don't have a CB in the truck, but I have what's called an emergency CB. And it actually has a mobile antenna, and it plugs into the cigarette lighter. And it's an actual CB. Just haven't gotten around to putting in an actual CB in yet. First aid kit, that's a whole different topic. We'll talk about that shortly if we even have time. But a basic first aid kit, you want bandages, you want ACE wraps, you want basically think stopping blood, you want oxygen. So you're thinking CPR barrier. Think of personal protective. So you want gloves, latex gloves, ideally powder-free. You want your CPR barrier. What goes in mine is also a BP cuff, stethoscope. I have an otoscope set. Now, thank you, Markham. It stays in the house, though. It doesn't go in my trauma kit.
Oh, that otoscope. Yeah, that thing's got otoscope, laryngoscope. I found one that had as many of the parts as I could think you might need on it.
Exactly. But it doesn't go in the trauma kit. I'm not going to have a reason to use that in a car crash. You want a battery handheld radio, and that should be a part of your 72-hour kit. I have 2 ABC fire extinguishers, like I said. Flashlights. I like headlamps. Personally, get a headlamp, because then your hands are free. But you want extra batteries for you. You want extra batteries, because your flashlight or headlamp ain't going to last forever. They're usually about AAA or AA. I always have extra AAAs and AAs in the truck. So, toolbox. And what goes in my truck are extra parts. I usually keep extra radiator hoses, extra belts. I don't go too extravagant. If I have to change an alternator out on the road, I'm sorry, I'm not going to spend $100 because I don't have a core to get an extra alternator. They'll get changed at the house. Rechargeable batteries. Trip's bringing up rechargeable batteries. I agree. I like rechargeable batteries. I also have mittens versus work gloves. Mittens keep you warm. Right. Work gloves keep you safe. Have a set of.
I like the trigger finger gloves because that's kind of the best of both worlds.
And
one of the things to remember about rechargeable batteries, though, the standard NiCad battery discharges at a rate of 5% a week, I believe, if you're not using them. So one of the things to do with if you're going to have rechargeable batteries is have them on a rotating recharge cycle. Every month or so, top them off, because they'll go deader than 4 o'clock just sitting there in the box.
Okay, so
just an inherent flaw with NiCads.
Just so you guys know, I've ordered some flashlights up that I'm going to test out, and if they're good, I am going to outfit us with them. They are high lumen rechargeable flashlights, but they use 18650 lithium ions. You can get 18650 lithium ions everywhere and anywhere. If you have several of those on hand and you're running most of your stuff off of those, you won't have really any trouble at all. So I'm getting these. I should have them Monday. I'm going to test them out, and if they turn out to be pretty good, I'm going to outfit us with them, because these are very easy to have charged up lithium-ion batteries. They don't discharge nearly as fast, and chargers are cheap and easy to come by. The batteries are not that expensive either. You have 3 or 4 or 5 of them charged up, ready to go, no problem.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
And that's also like for those hand crank radios that use the mobile phone battery, like the cordless phone battery. That's what's usually in like your Eton, any of these wind up hand crank CBs and stuff. A lot of times they have that. I think they're the equivalent of 3 rechargeable AAAs wired in series. Now the white cover, it's got like a white plastic bag on. Those need to be tested periodically because they have a memory effect, and you go into a situation thinking you've got a rechargeable battery pack and it won't take a charge. So you need to look at that too.
Yeah.
On the older tech of battery.
A lot of your newer stuff now is starting to use the 18650s just because they're so readily available, and the fact that they don't have a memory charge, and the fact that they don't discharge quite so easily. So there's a lot of the new stuff's now starting to use 18650s.
Well, one of the nice things now is you have LED lights, and the current, they're very bright, and the draw is minimal compared to the old, like our old, flashlights we used in the military, the D-cell with the standard, you know what I'm talking about, the old standard light bulb.
Incandescent.
These things, the incandescent bulb would drain the battery, and it was, you couldn't see 10 feet away from yourself with that thing. Now these new ones, 2 AA's will outshine the hell out of the old field flashlights we used to have, and the battery will last forever.
Yeah, the ones that I've got coming are T6 Cree LEDs. They're 20,000 lumen, and they use the 18650 batteries. So,
damn, sounds good.
And they cost me $10
when God said,
for
"Let
two
there
of
be
them.
light," that's what He used.
Yeah,
right.
Well, and they cost me $11 for 2 of them.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. So, okay, flashlight, headlamp. You got your toolbox, your jack, whistle or air horn. I like the air horn. It's loud. You get lost. You get stuck. A whistle, small, compact, easy to use. Yeah, but an air horn is going to go a lot farther range. So personally, I like the air horn. Like we discussed earlier, plastic bags. Think of a garbage bag. There's a lot you can do with a garbage bag. Keeps things dry. You can actually cut out armholes. You have an instant rain jacket or a poncho. Rain gear. Keep rain gear in your rig. Like we said earlier, I always have change, small cash, whatnot for phones. So pay phones, you don't find them too often, but they are around, and they usually try to keep those priority as far as power goes. Extra medications, if you're on meds, keep them in your rig. And heaters. So you can get a case of the hand warmers or the toe warmers from Costco for relatively cheap. And there's a whole lot of the warmers. And they generally don't go bad. They're the ones that you open up, oxygen hits them, you shake them up, you got instant heat. Personally, people tell you to get waterproof matches, just go down and get you a family pack of lighters. So much easier.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other uses for lighters that, because that matches just won't handle.
Right.
They're more durable.
The kind that have I like to get the ones that are almost like a small blowtorch. They've got the drug paraphernalia bad rap, but those things will light stuff. Something about those hand pack, those warmers. A lot of people think, okay, when they're done, they throw them away. That is a supersaturated potassium. I believe it's a potassium chloride solution. And there's usually a little metal wafer in there, and you click the little metal wafer, and that starts the reaction. If you take those when they're done and boil them, they turn back to clear, and you can reuse them.
Okay.
Oh, no, that's neat.
You can reuse those. Matter of fact, that used to be one of the hospitals I used to work in. We had those for heel warmers, because a lot of times if you're sticking a baby, you have to, you do a heel stick, and you warm the heel with those. Well, it's like, okay, whose turn is it to take all these used packs home and boil them? You'd go home with about 50 of them things and boil them all night to reactivate them, or reset them. But you don't have to throw those away when you're done. If it's you can reuse those. I don't think they mention that because they'd rather you go out and buy a bunch of them all the time.
And buy more. Yeah, it's a money thing.
Yeah, they certainly don't tell you that.
Yeah, you boil them till they look clear again, and they're good to go.
Something I wanted to bring up here is, as we're talking about warmth and we've talked about layers of clothing and stuff, is, educate yourself and be aware of the signs of hypothermia, because a lot of people, unfortunately, who aren't aware of the signs of hypothermia will begin to think that they're getting too hot, and they will literally take all their clothes off, and to the point where they literally freeze to death even faster. It's one of the signs and symptoms of hypothermia that will trick your brain into thinking that you're over hot when you're not. You're freezing. So, educate yourself and know what the signs of hypothermia are, because otherwise that'll sneak up and get you.
And be aware, you don't have to, it doesn't have to be winter. You can get hypothermia in July. All hypothermia is basically there can be a shock to your system that drops your core temperature. if you're, help me out here, Markham, I believe it's 95 degrees. If you start dropping below 95 degrees is when you are starting into the first phases of hypothermia.
Yeah, because you're right at 39, so 98 point.
Yeah, 98.6 is the healthy.
Up and down. But,
right.
Yeah, there is, and I think if core temperature gets down to 70, you're going to be in organ failure shutdown. The only time that really helps is if you're in water, because then your organs don't rot and your brain doesn't spoil as quickly, and they may be, they've actually brought people that have been drowned for, I think the record's about an hour.
Yeah.
They brought somebody back up, brought their heat back up, got their blood circulating, and actually got them back with no damage.
No damage. Right.
But the main thing to do is layers. And fleece. The micro fleece used to be hellishly expensive. You can buy micro fleece base layers for next to nothing now. It's almost disposable.
Shop around. You can find that stuff cheap on eBay. You can find it cheap on Amazon. You can find, we're in an era of technology where you can find, everyone's competing to get your business. So prices go low online. It's much cheaper to buy it online than it is to get it in a store.
You can buy one of those GE Help full power 40-channel emergency CB radios on eBay, $10 free shipping.
Right.
And I'm not sure how. I've hesitated because I don't know if that old tech still works, but it's the same 40 channels it was back when I was into CBs, I'd imagine.
It is.
So
it is. Not as many people are into it, but the more survival-minded people get, the more they'll start picking it up again. Another thing to keep in your rig is map and compass. Keep a map and a compass.
Yes.
A map of your exact area that you live in. You want street names, things like that. There's a city map. But keep maps of your area and a compass so you know which direction you're going. Now,
and you don't have to buy that crap. You can do that. People say, well, maps cost money. No, they don't. You go to Google Earth or you go to MapQuest. You can print that crap off at work.
Exactly.
You can print that stuff off.
Not necessarily recommended at work. Unless you happen to own the business. Just a thought.
Well, some places are more liberal about that kind of thing than others. But, the point is, if you wanted to be an absolute cheap ass about it, there's ways to build your map collection.
Oh, yeah.
Personally, and Liz helped me do this when we were coming back, when we were going up to Washington coming back. Rest areas, almost all of them, if you hit them during the day when the Welcome Center is open, you can get a free state map.
Absolutely.
My Jeep is full of free state maps.
Or even go to the Forestry Service. Forestry Service has maps for free as well.
Yeah.
U.S. Geological Survey.
Yeah, most of those maps at Forest Service aren't free anymore. Last time I went to get maps from the Forest Service, and I spent like $15-20 a map. So, yeah.
All right.
Well, there's still libraries. Libraries still have that kind of, so you can make copies at a library if you need them.
So getting back to your rig real quick. So I do have extra truck parts. I have my belts and my radiator hoses and whatnot. The basic ones are going to go out that I can fix on site for maybe 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, and I'm back on the road again. Along with that, I have POL products. I have my oil. I have coolant. I have brake fluid. I have power steering fluid. The ones that are, if you have a leak, if you say your radiator hose blows, you have a new radiator hose, but you need to put coolant back into it. So I've got the basic stuff to get me back on the road. Have good tires.
You know, if you blow a radiator hose that's under 15 psi, there's not going to be much left. There's not going to be, maybe what was trapped in the block is all you're going to have left.
And Elizabeth brings up jumper cables. I believe we already mentioned jumper cables, I believe. But yeah, jumper cables are in my truck, tow ropes in my truck, extra blankets are in my truck, parts, POL products, 2 ABC fire extinguishers, a saw. I don't have a chainsaw, but I do have a handsaw, a very large handsaw. If I really had to get a tree out of the road, it's big enough for me to get it done. Tow rope, we've already discussed. It's already in there. Elizabeth's bringing up stuff again. And a pry bar. I have a 6-foot pry bar. Very heavy duty, enough to pry open somebody's door if I have to. If the fire department's not en route and we can't wait for Jaws of Life, that door's coming open. I've got a pry bar big enough to do it. That's for accidents, things like that. Inspecting your vehicle. Make sure you have good tires. Ideally, you want, at a minimum, I suggest you have all-wheel drive. But 4-wheel drive is preferable. If you're in the city, all-wheel drive is perfect. At a minimum, get front-wheel drive versus rear wheel. Front wheels are usually decent about handling snow. And always remember, I have to tell people this all the time, just because you got a 4-wheel drive does not mean you're invincible in ice. Mm-hmm. And if you're driving in winter, have your lights on. You know what kills me? We're in fog. How many cars are, no lights? You can't see them. They're invisible. It only takes a second to turn your lights on. If somebody hits you, whose fault that's going to be?
Yeah, one of the things I like about my car is the lights come on automatically, so I don't really have to worry about it. But yeah, keeping the lights on, it helps. You talked about having the extra parts and stuff in your vehicle. That's a good idea, absolutely. But another good idea is maintaining your vehicle on a regular. Because if you maintain your vehicle on the regular, those belts aren't going to be bad. That hose isn't going to be bad. Obviously there is the oh crap moments, but for the most part, as long as you're maintaining your vehicle, especially the one that you're going to have to get out of someplace with, you shouldn't have any of those issues, really.
And that's true. But I'm talking, what if you hit a tree? What if there's a lot of what ifs?
Oh yeah, like I said, there's no crap moments.
Right. If you maintain your vehicle, check your windshield wipers, check your belts, check your hoses, check your basic stuff, and you should be fine. And windshield washer fluid, the thing people don't think about. But you drive down Highway 20, for example, and you get a nothing but muddy windshield. I know you know that, Corey.
Oh yeah, mine's always full.
Well, another good reason, another good idea of why you keep an upper and lower radiator hose and a belt. There are manufacturing defects, or there are, that rock that made the weird, you hit it with your tire, something maybe nicked that hose and it's not readily apparent right away. Those things can usually be stored. I know in the Jeep there's a compartment in the back where the spare tire is. There's enough room to carry half a parts store in that tire well.
Yeah. Well, and I said that there's your oh crap moments, obviously. my major point was there's unfortunately anymore we've gotten a bit lazy as a society, and a lot of people don't really think about maintaining their vehicles anymore. They'll take them in and get the oil change once in a while, but nobody's checking their belts. Nobody's checking their hoses and stuff like that. You go into my vehicles, my hoses have been checked, my belts have been checked. I know what's good, I know what isn't good, and what isn't good gets replaced. So it's keeping your vehicles maintained is a big critical thing. Yes, have the parts on hand in case of that oh crap moment, like you're talking about, because things happen. But on the regular, for most things. If you maintain that vehicle, you're not going to have any of those problems. You're going to be fine out there, that's for sure.
Well, and also go to the boating department of any Walmart and get a flare gun. I mean, don't even unseal the thing. Just throw it in there somewhere. I mean, it's cheap. I think they're $20 or less. You get 3 flares.
Right.
In the worst case scenario, you can't fix it yourself. You're in a pickle. If you followed everything else up to this point, you're overdue. Somebody's looking for you. Have that flare gun. You hear the airplane going overhead, or don't just pop the flare up in the air. Wait till they know you're overdue. At the point where people are going to start looking for you, then pop that flare.
Exactly, and they're really not that expensive, I don't believe.
No, I'm looking it up right now, as a matter of fact.
So we're down to our last 10 minutes, folks, and it's been a great show. Hopefully you learned a lot. We'll be doing this again probably about May to get everyone ready for the fire season. And, well, frankly, the drought in summer season, because that's a whole different topic as well. And if anything actually changes in the disaster side, then we might throw an extra topic in there. Or if I get too many questions and want to bring it on the air, then we'll discuss it then as well. Do you have next week's schedule popped up, Corey?
Give me a second. It'll take me just a moment. I believe next week, UFO disclosure. Is it here?
Okay.
Yeah.
There you have it. UFO disclosure. Is Tom DeLonge correct? Or is it all a pipe dream? And what's coming down the pipes?
It's not even DeLonge, man. It's not even DeLonge. It's just, the article that we've had in a couple of the main media sources and a few things like that have gone on recently. Is that really? As far as I'm concerned, DeLonge is just an idiot. He's a pawn in a game, and his crap just doesn't really matter, to be honest.
Right.
And Joe's in the chat room saying next person that says disclosure gets a pointy stick to the head.
well, come
sorry,
on,
Joe. Next week
disclosure happened in 1952.
I agree. And next week we're talking disclosure. And is it a pipe dream? Is it a bunch of BS? Or
this is why I keep asking people regarding that. Why people are waiting for the government to tell them something. Let's face it. Look at what governments do.
All the other governments are talking about it. Why does it take America to be the one to talk about it? I mean, seriously.
Because we got the most to lose, probably, in civil suits and bloody noses when it comes to our politicians.
To most people, government, is that official word, and of course it doesn't mean anything come from somebody else unless it comes from them, which is such a backwards way of thinking. But
well, that was my thought. But, I do believe we digress.
Yeah. So, in wrapping up tonight, folks, common sense. I want you to think outside the box. I want you to think about comfort. What can you not or need to live without? What can you get that'll make your life more comfortable if the power goes out? If you get caught in a windstorm? If you get stuck because there's a tree down on your road? Now, what I'm working on locally, too, is kind of like an alert roster of different skills. I already have a guy that will come cut trees out of the road. We've got a guy, an electrician. We've got certain skills that I can call on if somebody needs help in a different area. If you have a roof leak, we have a roofer. Things like that is what we're working on for the community. So make sure your vehicles are up to par, And I always encourage anyone, keep your fuel tank at least half full, preferably full, but I know gas is expensive, but at least half full. Because in our community, if the bridge goes out, you've got to drive a long way to get around back to Highway 20. Sometimes you have to, drive an extra 30, 40 miles to get around an accident. You need to have gas to get you out of the area. So, preparation will make you survive disasters and keep your families prepared. Anyone else?
From my standpoint, it really boils down to, for pity's sakes, get to know who's living beside you. Out in the road, yeah, it's necessary to do all the road work and what have you. But for in town or in city disasters, knowing who your neighbor is can mean all the difference in the world.
Well, I'll worry about that when I move to concrete.
Yeah. The other thing, I think the big thing is that, look, there is a ton of information out there that you don't really have to look very hard for that will give you the preparedness stuff that you need for the in case during, the months of the year that things are not so wonderful. Winter is pretty much that time. You're going to run into windstorms, ice storms, snowstorms, and depending where you're at, things can get pretty hairy. And the thing of it is there's enough information out there to get yourself prepared for any of that, to where that even in a bad situation, you're not going to have any trouble surviving. Just go do it. Take that time, get yourself ready, so that when the crap does hit the ventilator, it's not going to be any sweat.
No.
Just make the decision to do it and do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Procrastination has never accomplished much.
No.
Well, procrastination is what kills you when the disaster hits.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's like I said, you're sitting there dying of thirst next to a mud puddle or a mud hole. I mean,
right.
Having that $14 life straw could have made the deal, or something like that. I'm not trying to plug a product, but a water purification device of some kind.
Yeah.
I mean, buy it at Walmart, the drugstore. Just have one.
They really aren't expensive.
Have one in your glove box. Yeah.
Having that stuff is a lot of that stuff is very inexpensive to have, and it can be life-saving.
And Don's in the chat room saying don't be in the city. Well, I do agree, but everybody has an option. If you're in the city, stay inside. Lock your doors. If you don't have weapons, get a kitchen knife. I mean, if you have to stay in the city, stay inside.
Yeah, if you don't have a weapon in the modern world, you don't have equipment. Because everything in the house is a potential weapon as far as self-defense goes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Hot coffee. Hot coffee in the face.
Heck, cold coffee in the face will still slow them down.
Well, that was one of the cool things about Krav. They taught you, you don't think about it, but the glass you're drinking out of right now can be a weapon. I mean,
Oh, I've actually got the Krav. I've got the Krav videos.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I tell you right now, I'll help anybody out. I'll do anything I can for somebody if it's possible for me to do, but don't step up in my house and think that you're going to take things over and destroy my stuff, because you probably won't make it out.
No. But you know what, Corey? It's probably about 90% of the houses in concrete.
You'll get out of the house. You just may not be in good shape.
Exactly.
Everybody should look up the Twilight Zone episode. I believe it's called The Shelter. There was one family in the block that had made a shelter. Watch that. That is one of the best laid out what would happen to a tight-knit. We're talking people that, partied together, stayed, came to each other's houses, a tight-knit community. one was prepared, the rest weren't. And when people have nothing to lose, they lose it.
Yeah, exactly.
And on that note, thank you for listening, folks. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. And stay tuned for next week.
Indeed.
Corey, take us home.
I will do that. I'd like to thank our panel tonight, Eric Markham, our FMP scientist, R. Keith Andrews, our astrologer and alien specialist. Join us next Saturday at midnight Pacific Standard Time, as our topic will be, is UFO disclosure here? Has it really come out there or not? You can find us on Spreaker.com, SpacedOutRadio.com, and The Fringe FM. And now on Wednesdays from 10 a.m. till noon on KSVU 90.1 on your FM dial. I would like to thank all of our listeners, because without you, there is no S4. Good night, and remember, keep your eyes to the skies.